Allard's neighborhood. Small town feel with big time ideas. After all, you are entitled to Brad's opinion. Here's your host, Brad Allard.
Well, hello, everybody. Hey, Josh, I'm a little loud, but not much, just a little. All right, thank you. Anyway, today we have Adam Russell, and this masked man over here is Larry Scott. We're going to talk about all the great things going on in Burleson, but mostly we're going to talk about we have a few concerns about what's going on down in Austin, you know, not just with the property tax, but also some of these other initiatives that would take away a city's ability to govern itself practically. And you're nodding your head, Mr. Russell.
That's right.
You got concerns, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah, I really do too. This is not the type of situation I remember voting for Republicans for, to be frank. Usually Republicans were the party of local governance, but not so much. And so we'll talk all about that, and we'll talk about the sales tax situation. Also, a lot of questions came up from the show I had with the mayor a few days ago about the Central Appraisal District and their proposal to freeze appraisals for, 3 years? Mm-hmm. And how much it would cost Burleson. And that could be a real concern. But anyway, but first, before we get to the ads, we want to ask Mr. Scott here, tell us an update about your situation.
Well, I'm doing a lot better. I went through the stem cell transplant, came out of that good. Hair is finally starting to grow back. Mm-hmm. And I'll start getting my immunization shots today, and it looks like everything, according to the doctor, is going the right direction.
That's good to know. So you'll know more in about 2 weeks, I believe you said.
Couple of weeks, I'll meet with the oncologist again, and we'll get the plan going forward in the future. Well,
we'll be praying for you. It's not a lot of fun, is it? I mean, you're not going through chemo, are you?
I've been through the chemo.
Yeah, okay.
2 weeks in the hospital in January with chemo. Mm-hmm. But it's rough on me, but it's rough on my caretakers and friends who are helping me.
Yeah. How's Sherry doing?
She's doing good. Mm-hmm. But, you know, as you go through this, you learn that the caretaker is more emotional on them, more stressful on them than it is the patient.
It very much is. I'm going through something similar to that with my father. And my mom is having to pull the load, and it's very, very difficult. But anyway, I could do a whole show on that, too, about caregivers and whatnot. But anyway, let's talk about our sponsors, and then we'll get into the heart of the matter. First of all, I should introduce y'all to Otto, right? Oh, I don't think so. Anyway, our place, of course, is the place I see a lot of big wheels in Burleson go for breakfast or for lunch and to do business and talk stuff and whatever else. That's what I like that for morning. But when I go for like an afternoon or an evening meeting, I like to go to Gina's. You know, I like the pizza. I like the atmosphere. And, you know, it's a good place to do business. I don't see the logo, Josh. Well, he's busy over there. Okay, he's busy over there. He got it going on, this poor guy. Taylor just kind of drops him in the grease. Anyway, there you go. But anyway, y'all been to Otto's, I'm sure, of either our place or Gina's. And they had this Sunday night thing that they really has gotten to be kind of big, you know. That's also a place, I believe, didn't they, in the last elections, didn't they not have, was it our place or Gina's that they had like meet the council candidates and that kind of thing?
I think it was Gina's.
It was Gina's.
It was Gina's, right. Okay. I also remember they had a pancake eating contest over at Otto's I think that was the group that was elected after y'all. Anyway, in Old Pro Roofing, we all know them. They're here in town. They over in Old Town. John Williams will get you all set up at 817-734-2756. Supposedly, we're going to have bad weather this weekend, and he and a couple of my friends in BNI are like, yes, bad weather, all right. You know, they hear the cash registers, you know. But if you have some problems with your roofing, he'll help you out with that. If you have some problems afterwards, I'm going to throw in a free plug for my friend Lisa and Morris Smith over at Stop Restoration. If you have some water damage from these storms, they can help you with that as well. Also, my good friend Jeff Kelly over at the Wethington Agency, 817-781-0546. He was on the show about a month ago, and he was talking about the growth in the Johnson County area, not just Burleson, but like Godley and Joshua as well. We're still growing. Are we growing as fast as we used to? Because for a time there, we were just breaking all records.
Just ticked it down a little bit, but
not a whole lot.
They had some growth numbers in these other slides.
Okay.
I can get to it while you do your sponsor.
Okay, that's good. But 817-781-0546. And if you're looking to move in and around this area, this is a guy to talk to. He knows what to do about the rates. Now, he'll tell you, and I think this is good advice, buy the home you want. You can always refinance because if you wait for the rates to come down, what normally happens is then the price goes up of the home because of increased demand and all that. So buy the home you want and then refinance. That's what we did way back in the day. But anyway, call Jeff and he'll take care of you. Also, Michelle Humphrey over at Hotworks on John Jones. Have 11 different workouts, infrared system. Does Mrs. Russell use this process, or am I thinking of somebody else?
Maybe somebody else.
Probably somebody else then. Okay, but I know that a lot of people, Victoria does, for example, uses this, and they have all these different types of workouts. If you don't really know what you need to be using, but you know what the results you want to get, Michelle will help you with that. If you're looking to increase core strength or flexibility or lose weight or whatever it is, Michelle and her crew can help you with that, and they'll tell you which one you need to be using. So Hotworks over in John Jones, over by Chicken Salad Chick, I guess. That's another place that my wife likes. So there you are. All these free plugs. I'll send them to Bill. Also, thank you to Tiffany. Now it's Tiffany Jane. Did y'all see that? She's changed her name. Okay. She says, I don't want to deal with all the baggage. So she's now Tiffany Jane is her name. And good for her. I could certainly see that. Oh, by the way, you might find this hard to believe, but Mrs. Scott's watching. She says, all right. No, when they're just watching, it's right here. She comments, it'll be on there. Okay. All right. And she's checking to make sure you're wearing that mask, isn't she?
I got it on.
Anyway, Local Life Magazine comes out in the first of the month, 30,000 homes and lots of extra copies in our retail areas. And so you'll be able to get your word out really well with her. Speaking of get the word out, our friend Cody O'Brien, and you may have not known this, but he hasn't been at the last couple of meetings. Why? Because he's a new father. Well, second-time father, and for some reason they want to spend time with their children. I don't know. But he'll be back in the saddle pretty soon. But this is where I get the news for my radio show is we kind of trade information and that kind of thing. So Burleson Buzz, $50 a year. It's a bargain. And lastly, Medicare counseling and therapy with Jerry Kavanaugh, 817-992-8034. This is over in the building with Rio Mambo and the Rim. I don't know what name of that building is, but we all know what I'm talking about. And if you're on Medicare, you can use Medicare to get counseling and therapy, particularly I'll be on Medicare in a couple of years. And those that are already on Medicare, they don't think of counseling and therapy as available to them or it's beyond their wallet. Now it's part of the Medicare provisions. And so if grief counseling or other types of counseling, you could get that done. And so give Jerry a call. Again, 817-992-8034. Say it right. Or GFCAVANA, that's GF Kavanaugh, at swbell.net. And I think that's it. We're going to do the nonprofits at the end. And we also have a big city event coming in a couple of weeks at Cinco de Mayo. So we'll be talking about that. Okay, let's talk about the first thing that's concerned me is, and concerned Mr. Fletcher, was the freeze of appraisals for 3 years. I'm finding it hard to believe that the people involved in supporting this decision aren't aware, or they discount the fact that it's really going to impact Burleson as a city or all the cities. What has been your response to the CAD, the Central Appraisal District, when you were talking to him about this? I mean, I'm sure you made it aware that it's going to cost money.
Right.
What do you tell them? And what do they tell you?
I know the mayor and city manager went to the CAD board meeting and gave a presentation about how it would affect us. This was last week.
Right. And Mr. Fletcher was on like 2 days before that. Mm-hmm. So
and we don't know. I think they're not going to do anything. They're not going to change the appraisals, the freezing of the appraisals, unless Austin makes them do it. Now, there is a bill that's been filed to go back to annual appraisals or annual reappraisals, but that hadn't really gone anywhere.
So where's the direction heading then? Are we headed towards a 3-year freeze or
So when we look at this year's budget, when we get the tax rolls, we are going to be budgeting in the 3-year freeze. Now, if you remember, at the acceleration away the housing values were, there's still some cushion left. We don't know how much, but so there'll be some cushion. Some people you can go 10% and things. How that goes. Right. So of course, we're limited to 3.5 now without having to call an election to vote on the rate. But there's still some there's still some cushion there in the values. But instead of having our growth model, I think we were growing at 5.5%. Is that right, Larry? We changed it.
We were growing at 5.5. That's what we budgeted at last year. Looking at the statistics now, the growth is going to be down around 3 to 3.5, according to the Labor Bureau.
Well, and I know y'all personally now, not just as council members, but I know that y'all take the very conservative view when you talk about growth,
Right?
because you don't take these optimistic, rosy scenarios like they do in DC. You even if you're pretty confident you're going to get X, you always budget a little less than X.
Correct.
Because you never know, right?
Right.
Well, going back to the 3-year appraisal, I went back all the way to 1982 when some of that legislation was created. And the appearance that I have, it was created for counties that have very low population, have very few municipalities, that it was unrealistic for them to do appraisals every year. But it's in the legislation, it's available to use, so I don't blame the county for using it. I just feel like it's used incorrectly. What it's going to do to the citizens is give them a balloon payment basically in 4 years. They'll get a 33% raise in 4 years on their property tax that they would have been paying out over a period of time. And you know what happened back when we had balloon payments on mortgages. For 10 years, they thought they had it made. Or I've had them. And you go and spend up to what you can spend, and then the balloon payment hits you and you lose your home. Now, I've never been in that situation, but I've had friends and other people that I've talked to that have been. So we got to make sure that the citizens understand that they need to save ahead of time for this balloon payment and don't be caught off guard in 4 years when the reappraisal comes through.
I can only imagine the turmoil that would cause, because a lot of people are very intense about the property tax situation. I'm sure as council members, you hear about it more than once, and about in the school districts certainly hear about it and whatnot. But what bothers me a little bit about this whole freeze thing is that, every community budgets on an extended timeline, okay, and and they base a lot of their bond sales on that, and they base their long-term capital projects like our police station. I mean, Victoria was talking about that's going to be a problem in probably creating all the things we need to do for that police station because we base it on certain assumptions, and now those assumptions are gone. Is that what y'all looking at as well?
That's correct. Over a period of time, we'll lose a lot of revenue that we had projected for.
It was $6 million is what Mr. Fletcher projected. You say, could it be more?
It's hard to project that. I know it's going to be more over a period of 3 years. And I know the city's putting out numbers that are on the margin of error. They're being cautious. But what that's going to do to the city, of course, when we start our budget, the city manager tells all the directors to cut a certain percentage, just like any successful business. And then the directors come back to the city manager with their cuts, and he approves their cuts. And then they go get their needs together, and they bring the needs to him, and he'll get 80 or 90 items from all the directors, and he'll cut it down to 15 or 20 to manage the budget that we have without having to cost the citizens any more money, putting priority on the roads and public safety.
I just see some real negative consequences coming from this. And I bet y'all do too, probably more so than I, because you're privy to all the data. I'm just getting kind of the Cliff's Notes version of this. But I do have concerns about that because, these growing communities are going to be hamstrung. And the communities that aren't growing very much, they won't help them either.
Right.
It's so, because particularly in a county like Johnson County, where there's growth all over it, it's not going to help us at all. The whole rebuttal to this whole argument I get when I talk to other people about it is about the scenario of people losing their homes because of property tax delinquency and that kind of thing. And I understand that. I just wonder, aren't there solutions to the problem that don't have to be so drastic? It's like my problems I'm having right now at DC. It's like, okay, yeah, that really is a problem. So rather than taking a chisel to it, they bring, Thor's hammer on it and that kind of thing.
Right.
This is what it looks like to me here locally.
Right.
Okay. If there is a real issue about people losing their homes because of rising property taxes, then we can address that without hamstringing public services.
There's an issue. I've looked it up. There's like 185 tax liens this year in Johnson County alone. there's been 3 in Burleson. And the way we do the economy in Burleson is we build the economy slow, we build it correct, so that the citizens here will have a reduced cost of burden. The cost of burden is you take what your monthly payment is to live in your home with your mortgage, your insurance, your taxes, and divide it by your monthly salary, and then divide that by 100, and you get a cost of burden. And 30% is exactly where the United States wants to be. That's perfect. You're living comfortably. Anything above that, you start getting into trouble. Anything below that, you're living really good. City of Burleson's around 32%. We're just slightly above that. But there are some cities in the county that are up to 40, 45%. And I understand that you can't have sales tax in every city. Not every business is going to move to every city. So they have to make adjustments to try to get this cost of burden down. They need to keep their eye on that. And that increases the quality of life of citizens, and that's what we're doing with our NEZ plans and our other plans we're putting together now that got to go to committee and council for future to try to get more property tax. What's going to happen when we lose this money is we're going to lose funding for police, we're going to lose funding for roads. Once the roads start to go down and degrade, they never come back. We're working really hard to keep them at a 61 level right now, which is scoring grade for roads, which is pretty good. And we're working really hard. We put an extra $1.6 million in the budget for this year.
That's right, Hidden Creek alone. I mean, I've seen a lot of work going on there.
But once your streets deteriorate and once you start losing public safety, you're going to have that. You're not going to have that opportunity to bring in businesses like you do now. Businesses look at the streets. They look at public safety. They look at the schools, and there won't be any abatement money available. So once you start losing business start leaving, roads deteriorate, then jobs are disappearing also. And that's going to affect the citizens of Johnson County probably worse than the property taxes. You got ad valorem tax, which is property taxes, city taxes all combined together. Then you got property tax, which is land value tax and improvement. And what nobody focuses on is the land value tax part of it. How fair that is it equal across the county? And if they were to focus on land value tax and raise the land value tax instead of the improvement taxes, then developers would be able to develop this land that they're invested in and build, more homes, build more businesses, build more industry without being taxed as much, because land value tax is going to stay the same. Land's not changing. It's not moving. It doesn't go anywhere. But if they can do that instead of the property tax on the improvements, then that'll bring in more business also.
Well, there's several bills down in Austin that would either greatly restrict y'all's ability to use property taxes as a financial revenue option, or eliminate it altogether, which is really the goal for a lot of people. It's just eliminate property tax and do everything on sales and ad valorem and all this other business. I have real concerns about that. I mean, yeah, I'd probably get some extra spending money, but I know as far as like a net gain on my income, I don't know if that'll happen because, first of all, you have natural inflation. We have these tariffs, which whether you're supportive of them or not, it is going to raise cost. And then you add these taxes on, and the people that support it said, well, if you put the ability to control your tax payments in their hands as opposed to, an appraisal district or something like that, you can modify your tax payments. If you really want that new refrigerator, you'll be willing to pay the extra money for it because you'll have extra money for it. But I'm a Republican capitalist free market guy, but I don't have that kind of faith in the market where every decision can be made like that. I just don't have a good feeling about this. Do y'all see it the same way, or am I over exaggerating?
I mean, the question is, what's it going to be replaced with if you eliminate a ball? Mm-hmm. And like you said, there's communities that if you do replace it with sales tax, and there's 100 people in the city, I don't know where they're going to get their.
Yeah, what's going to happen to Grandview or Alvarado or Rio Vista? I mean, particularly someone more isolated like a Rio Vista, they don't have the kind of wherewithal. And plus, what do you think the biggest retail business in Rio Vista is? It's probably a grocery store, right? Well, as of now, groceries aren't taxed, so they're not going to get revenue from that. I don't want groceries to be taxed. They do that in Oklahoma. but they also have very low property taxes as well. And some people say we need to do what Oklahoma's doing. I'm sure you're familiar with Mr. Crisp. He says eliminating property taxes sure will add some money to people's pockets on the property tax part, but then day-to-day, everyday life becomes way more expensive, and that will be a lot harder for poorer folks.
And he's exactly correct. It's disproportional. If you do away with property tax and go with the consumption tax, it'll be a disproportional tax on those that are poor or less fortunate. Because when they go out, they're going to buy $20,000 worth of material all year long, and they're going to pay tax on that, and that's a big proportion of their salary. Whereas somebody that's wealthy, it's going to be a small proportion of their salary. So we're exchanging one disproportional tax with another.
One of the debates, if you will, I've had with people that support the elimination of property taxes, yeah, it'll help me, maybe, but what if you rent, like my daughter? Is she going to see a benefit from that? Their opinion is that if you eliminate property taxes, rents will come down because of the competitive nature of trying to get tenants for your apartment building. I'm not quite so sure about that. It's not so much I think all the apartment owners will get together in some secret phone call, because that's supposedly illegal, but they don't have to do that, you know?
Right.
They don't have to. They know what their competitors are charging per square foot and that kind of thing. They don't have to make an informal or formal agreement not to lower rent. And so I don't know if the benefit of that will go to people that don't own property. And I don't know. I'd have to be really, really convinced that this would not be a regressive tax on lower income people.
Well, the landlords are running a business like any other business. They're not running a charity.
Right.
And they're in it to make money. They're making every dollar they can, even by capitalizing when they go through and do their insurance every year and take off the money they spent versus how much money they made. And it reduces their taxes, property taxes, from 10% down to 2.9 or 3 if you do capitalization correct. So they're doing everything they can to make a profit. So I don't expect, when they eliminate property tax, for rates to go down.
And also, property taxes are applied to businesses within the city. And, so if a business owner is having to pay less in property tax, does that necessarily mean he or she's going to lower the product price? Because they now, there's all sorts of things. And it's based on a lot of assumptions that sometimes I feel like are a bit flimsy or unreliable, maybe is the better word. You talk about, Larry, you said it, human nature is they're going to make as much money as they can. And if they get a situation where they theoretically could lower their prices 10%, but they only have to lower them 2% to remain competitive, that's what they're going to do. And that's it. And I don't know.
I hate to see extra regulations put on free enterprise. There's already enough.
Yeah, you heard that. And so I don't think right now they're going to be voting on it because they're focused on the voucher issues and all that. But there will be some progress made on this before the end of the session. But I almost would bet my last dollar there'll be more than one special session devoted to property taxes, because that's a big thing. And they want to get it done now because if they don't do it this time, there'll be an election before they have a chance to do it again. And who knows how those elections will turn out. And so they're going to be pushing extra hard this summer on those property taxes. And because the Republicans in particular want to run on that in 2026. I don't know if Abbott's going to run again. I haven't really heard, but you never know. But that's one concern. But that's just one of many bills in which are taking away local prerogatives in governing. Victoria and I were talking one about zoning, and y'all probably have seen that one. Which one? I don't know which one is the most prominent, but generally speaking, they take the zoning power out of your hands. Why would they do that? I mean, we're not San Francisco. Right. We don't have highly restrictive zoning laws. I tell you, what's much more restrictive are those HOA agreements, not anything y'all are doing. And so what is promoting this, taking away the power of cities to be able to zone?
A lot of it is the representatives in Austin, they don't like the big giant cities. And there's a handful of them. There's 6 or 7 of the biggest cities in Texas. Yeah. Well, and then they make it apply to everybody else. Now we went down for Johnson County Day a few weeks ago and met with our local representatives. So it was Representative Kerwin and Cook, because Cook handles the Tarrant County portion of Burleson, and then Senator King. And I did make a notion, or to Representative Kerwin and Cook, who were both in there, that these bills that are coming, chances are a lot of these may pass, but if they could put an exemption threshold, like maybe cities under 100,000, 150, 100,000, and let them not apply, because it's the small towns like us are doing things right, and don't let what these big towns do, that big cities are doing, affect, they do a knee jerk and it make it affect everybody, and it hurts us.
Which in particular is the zoning issue that gets y'all most concerned? Is it the extra dwellings on property and all that? That concerns me a little bit. Now, you go out in the country and there's room to do that, and put what we call mother-in-law suites out there and all that, and that's great. But even in the county, we have certain restrictions.
I think the big one was it was going to regulate lot size, or take away the where you can have a 1,000 square foot lot and put something on it,
right?
And where we can't have a minimum lot size.
That would be a real problem, because you get like your typical city lot, and in most Burleson neighborhoods, putting an extra dwelling in the backyard or something like that. I mean, you're talking about urban density right there, and you're also talking about strain on the infrastructure.
Yeah.
How would y'all keep up with that?
Right.
Particularly if they take away property taxes.
Right.
So I have concerns about that. I understand, but there's a bill. Also, I did read. They call it the frat house bill, because basically it would take away the city's ability to regulate how many residents are in one dwelling. Right now, I think there's a certain limit of non-related people that can live in one dwelling. That would take it away entirely. So you could basically have a 1,500 square foot house with 20, 30 people living in it, and some sort of like a hotel almost.
But when the city of Austin starts taking away the rights of the city to legislate itself, to govern itself, and they take away the property taxes to go to a sales tax that they distribute, we're going back towards, I don't want to be name callers, but back towards colonialism.
Yeah.
And we're going to have the king, the landlord, and the tenants.
It seems to me that, Dan Patrick looks from his throne, which is what I think it is, because Dan Patrick runs this state. Abbott's, he's a willing participant, but he wasn't on board with all these vouchers and all this other stuff until about 3 years ago, when he got his mind right, so to speak. But Patrick and his crew, they look at Austin and all the liberal excess and all this other stuff. And there's some things Austin's done that's really been poor, like their defund the police routine and that other junk. But they don't take care of Austin. They say, we're going to do it statewide. And that's just, we don't have those problems Austin does here. Why aren't we getting the same treatment that Austin's getting? Or Houston or whatever. They look at the blue cities, if you will, and they look at it like, well, we'll settle their hash, and everybody's hash is getting settled. And that's not a good thing.
Right.
And, the Republican Party used to be the party of less government. It didn't sound like it now. And this happened in the schools. I've told this story many times, but when I started teaching school back in 1988, we had the TEA and we had TEACs and we had to teach and all this other stuff. But we never thought about Austin. And then about 2002 or 3 with No Child Left Behind, and also Mr. Perry's initiatives, all that, they got more and more and more intrusive, and more unfunded mandates, and they basically run a lot of these schools now. Irma, Ms. Crisp, says full support on smaller towns to make decisions for their communities, but don't even the bigger cities have impervious cover ordinances? I'm reading this from a distance. Impervious cover ordinances that restrict how much you can actually put on the lot for a single-family home. I would assume so.
Yeah, every city's got their own ordinances about the size of the lots, how many houses you can put on there, dwellings, single-family home, multifamily home, so forth. And it's to the advantage of the city as they get bigger and become landlocked to reduce, or I guess release some of those ordinances and start having smaller lots, start having more duplexes, more multifamily homes in order to give people a place to live. We had the urban spawn 20 or 30 years ago, where everybody moved out of the big city into the smaller cities, and they bought half-acre, 1-acre lots, and it spread out. And that's where your property tax invasion came from. Reduce the size of the lots, put more homes on them, give ADUs, auxiliary dwelling units, which is your mother-in-law house. Then each individual will be paying less property tax.
Well, I know that you probably heard this more than I do, but one of the big issues about housing in Burleson was, apartments and all this other business. And I know that both the Obama and the Biden administrations were trying to use their power to make sure there were more and more and more apartment complexes, particularly for lower income. And it sounds wonderful, but there's other issues involved in that. It sounds like Austin, in some ways, is going the same direction. They're doing the same thing that they hollered and yelled about with Mr. Obama in particular. I remember they were having a big issue, not in this town, but another one about if they didn't put in some low-income housing, they'd be have civil rights charges filed against them and other funding restricted. Well, that sounds like what Austin's doing. Maybe for different motivations, but it's the same thing. If they're going to take away the ability of local communities to zone, what's the difference? Okay, and I'm not real confident that we're always going to have good management on this issue, because there's so many other issues that they haven't really done that great on. Now we're going to put this in their hands as well? That's it. I don't know. I got real problems with that.
Well, citizens need a comfortable place to live. In Johnson County, the average cost of burden, I hate to go back to that again, for a rental property, and this includes homes and apartments, is around 24.1%. And that's all the cities combined. City of Burleson's a little lower. And the cost of burden for homes, mortgage, owning your home, countywide, if I remember correctly, is around 42%. And 30% is the cutoff mark. Remember that.
Right.
So it's more beneficial to the citizens and more comfortable for the citizens to be able to rent sometimes rather than purchase a home. And we got to give them that opportunity to have a better quality of life if it's sustainable.
Well, it's true, because I had a relative, a cousin's son, that was renting in Benbrook, and he was renting. He was fairly healthy. He said, I think I'm going to buy. I'm tired of renting. And the cost was almost like 2.5 times. His mortgage would have been much higher than what he's paying in rent for the same home. He was thinking about buying the home he was renting. Yeah. And Benbrook, is a growing community like we are.
Sometimes when you make that move, then that's the time to get the second job, which nobody wants.
Yeah.
But if you have to work 2 jobs in order to afford a house and raise your family, then you might look at what you can eliminate.
The family or the jobs?
Well, you want to eliminate one job so you can spend more time with your family. So you got to make that decision.
Jackie Jones says, I'm concerned how eliminating property taxes will affect our first responders. Crime is growing all around us. Also, Bill Janish. I bet you know him.
I've heard of it.
Yeah. The ratio of apartments to homes in Burleson is probably close to the same as it was 60 years ago. Let's take Ms. Jones's contention first here. We are hearing more about crime. I don't know if it's because we hear more about it or it's actually growing. Y'all have the stats. And Colin Gregory can tell me about that. We'll have him on in May. But as far as the first responders, that's what you mentioned, Larry, or is that it's hard to kind of recover that. Once it gets out of hand or a little bit, it's harder to put it back together.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there are certain things that you can cut and certain things you can't cut. You don't want to cut water and sewer. You don't want to eliminate or reduce the ability to supply water or sewer to citizens. Roads, you can cut the funding on roads, and you'll have more potholes. And
Hidden Creek was getting kind of rough before y'all started working on it.
But I heard a good analogy on that is a citizen hits a pothole, cost them $2,000 to have their front end rebuilt and realigned. If they would have paid the taxes, then it would have probably been cheaper on them.
A lot cheaper. And, and also there's also an aspect of a community about how well it keeps itself. Many, many, many years ago, New York City was a dump. All right. And Rudy Giuliani, who's kind of gone off the deep end lately, but back then he was a pretty good mayor. And they had this broken windows policy, as they called it. If you don't fix the broken windows, and everything else will start going to crap as well. And after his 4 year or 8 years are up, he had improved the city. Now there's some controversy about it, and that's another story. But the point is that his attitude was, if you don't fix the potholes and take care of those things, the other things that are even bigger are going to get out of hand. And that's what I think would happen here. And if your community starts degrading because your roads are getting poor, your parks are getting overgrown, people notice those things.
Well, I want to assure the citizens of Burleson that we're working extremely hard, putting in a lot of hours right now, pre-budget time, and we don't plan on reducing the budget for the roads. We don't plan on degrading our public safety at all. But those are options if it gets extreme that we may have to look at.
And everybody says, well, we can cut the parks, but that's a separate funding mechanism, right? So it's not really that. It's not like you can swap that park money for police money. And so, the things that people think can be cut may not be possible legally, or maybe mandated by the state, because you also have to deal with mandates as well. And so you have that problem. Now, as far as Mr. Janish's contention that the ratio of apartments is roughly the same, I guess if I had the data in front of me, I could give a more intelligent answer. Just eyeballing it, I think we have more apartments than we used to on a percentage basis than we did 30 years ago. Because when I moved here in 1991, there's about 3 apartment complexes, and they were kind of small. And maybe if I had the math, I'd have a better answer. But I'm just thinking proportionally, I think we have more apartments than we used to. Is that a fair assumption?
I don't know the numbers, but just looking at it, I agree that the ratio is probably more apartments now than there was before percentage-wise.
Well, I remember when your former colleagues, Mr. Johnson, was on the show, and prior to the show, we were talking about what we wanted to talk about. He said, I don't care, just don't ask me about apartments, because he had had an earful about that, because there was a complex that was that Main on Depot. Depot on Main, whatever you want to call it, Depot on Main. That caused a lot of heartburn. He said, "Don't ask me about the depot," and but it's getting to be, like I think of my daughter in her case, that's her only option. I mean, she didn't have the money to buy a house because of things that are not really related to what we're talking about here, but just houses are expensive, and I just hate to see. That power taken from you. Mr. Phillips must have turned into the wrong show, because he says, "Good morning, gentlemen." I guess we're gentlemen. I guess. All right. Well, we'll go with that. Alex, I'm just going to ask you here over the air: is it become even more important to shop local? I'm just asking. Anyway, so that brings us. I want to circle back to that point. If you go back to a sales tax, how would y'all bring businesses into Burleson without a tax abatement option?
Right.
I mean, those big warehouses, they came here because it's near the highway and it's near the DFW Metroplex and all these other factors. But one of them is they could have put that in Cleburne, or they could have put that in Alvarado or something like that. But they put it in Burleson. Why? Because you all offered them inducements to be here.
Right.
What inducements are going to be here now?
It makes us competitive. and what a lot of people don't understand is that land was earning the city zero. So if you're giving them a tax break, they're still building a $100 million facility. And even if you give them a 50% break for 10 years, they're still going to pay that much more than having it at zero on the tax rolls. And that's the only reason why, like you said, why we were able to get some of these businesses.
And the employment they bring to the city. It gives the opportunity for young couples to have an opportunity to work close to home. And when they work close to home, they spend more in sales tax. So it helps the city in both ways.
And Mr. Phillips says it's always extremely important. We were kind of joking with him because we know what that is. But also he says we have only done one tax abatement over the last 5 years or so.
They're all rolling off now. Within the next couple of years, a lot of them are rolling off.
So the one that he's probably referring to, I guess, would be that big bakery.
Paris Baguette.
Yeah, okay.
And that's an ad valorem tax break. And the rest of it was all the 380 agreements are all sales tax.
But the problem we got with Austin right now is they got legislation to take away property tax and make us live on sales tax. And they also got legislation to reduce sales tax by the originating, warehouse.
Right, so, that's what I was going to ask you next. You brought that up, and I was not aware of that. But the fact is, it isn't just we're going to a sales tax, but who collects that sales tax? Where is it going to be applied? Is it going to be at the point of purchase, or is it going to be the warehouse that it came from? So why don't you explain that? Because I did not really clue in on that.
We got legislation in now that that's originating warehouse is what it's called. Where if you say, for instance, order something from Amazon right now, it comes to a Burleson address, Burleson gets sales tax. If this bill passes, then say the originating warehouse is in Houston, then Houston will get the sales tax.
In Houston, you just kind of mentioned was Dan Patrick's old area, right? Because you mentioned he has a lot of warehouses that send out there. And you know, the warehouses we have here, I don't know. I mean, they're not the same thing as an Amazon
No,
warehouse.
we have factories, we have businesses like that store material, cold storage, but they're cold storage for products that have already been purchased, and they just ship them out to, say, a hamburger joint or something like that.
Like Chicken Express
Like
and
Chicken Express.
McLean Foods and
Yes.
whatnot. Yeah.
So we don't get originating taxes off any of that.
Well, that's a real concern. Because first of all, I know for a fact that smaller communities use Amazon and things of that nature online quite a bit because they get some stuff they can't buy at the local store. All right, they can find something they need, but you know the local store, even if it's a Walmart, may not have it or whatnot. And then, so that's not going to help the community at all. And if am I taking this too far? That if you go to a local Walmart, would they be able to apply the sales tax, or would they have to pay the sales tax to where they got their products from?
If you buying it locally, I think you still the taxes there locally. It's more for the online stuff.
Okay.
I think
More
it's
for
where
the
it's
online.
All right. But see, a lot of people shop online at Walmart
It's a
too.
huge right.
One thing I can't found anybody that can't explain to me right now is, say you've got an air conditioning company here in Burleson, and they order 30 complete condensing unit sets from a warehouse in Fort Worth, and they've got a tax permit, so they don't pay taxes on it when they buy it. They pay taxes when they sell it. So they sell each one of those units over a period of a couple of months in Burleson. Does the tax they collect go to the city of Burleson, or does it go to the originating warehouse that they did pay taxes on originally? And that's not described in that bill. That's a gray area.
So basically, the only way that you could be assured of getting the tax money is if it's sold here and it originated here, which for most communities that's not the case. I mean, almost all your major warehouses are in urban and suburban areas. They're not out in the middle of nowhere. You don't see big warehouses out near Dublin or something like that. And if they take it to this extreme, I don't know how any of these cities are going to survive. Because I don't do a lot of online shopping. I really don't. I don't really care for it, but my wife does for smaller things, or for things that they really are cheaper by like half. But, the fact that it's going to cost our local community money is something that we're going to have to be cognizant of,
Right.
And that's going to be a real problem for a lot of retailers. I don't know. I think that they're stepping into this hornet's nest, and they just think they're not going to get stung.
Well, it's hard as a council member to keep up with all the legislation.
I'll bet that's true.
And so that's why we have lobbyists that go down there and work for us. And they're trying to eliminate those lobbyists also.
Really?
To gain control. And
even though it's clearly stated in the First Amendment, it's a right to lobby and petition the government. To assemble and petition is plainly written into the First Amendment. They want to prevent you from doing that, or prevent you from using city funds from doing that?
City funds from doing
City
it.
funds.
Okay.
So we've got several council people, Alexa, Victoria, Adam, that have been making several trips to Austin, and they've gone to Washington to represent the city. So we've been very fortunate to have a council that understands the legal aspect of legislation and able to go talk to people and give them our story. And I appreciate that, and I thank you very much, Adam. That's not in my wheelhouse. I can't do that. But without that, and they do away with the tax paying of the lobbyist, then where would these cities be that don't have council people that have that ability?
Well, you're not going down there and acting in a partisan manner. You're going down there to support Burleson, because the conversations you're having with people may be of one party or the other, but y'all aren't. I mean, you may have your personal political opinions, of course, but you're not going down there as Republican council members.
Right.
You're going there to represent City of Burleson.
Correct.
And basically what I understand this bill, yeah, you can go down there on your own dime and on your own time, but, I understand, Mr. Russell, you have a job, is that right?
Right.
Right. And Miss Martha, got to keep her in jewelry and stuff like that, right? And so, but I'm just saying that it's, that's unrealistic. For them to expect you not to come down. This is also happening to the schools, I found out, because I was like, why is not BISD and other school districts been more vocal against these vouchers? But I found out that Mr. Paxton's bringing lawsuits against those districts that do so. And I guess Dr. Jimerson doesn't want to go through that legal mess, and I don't blame him, because we're not going to win that fight after a lot of expense. But I was like, hey, Burleson ISD, hey, stand up and fight and all this other stuff. But basically, that was taken from them, and then they want to do that to the cities. Mm-hmm. Well, that's not what democratic style government is based on. Is suppression of that kind of ability to address lawmakers and make the point.
And it's out of the Senate now, and it's into the House. I think it's one of the others passed it for the lobbying.
I'm just trying to put my head around Ms. Kerwin's position on this, because she's a former mayor. Wouldn't she be opposed to this?
I think the House is where it's interesting. In our federal government, the Senate slows everything down, but now it's our state Senate is going crazy, and the House is what's kind of slowing it down. So I think that where we could try to.
I hope so, but I would just, again, with Ms. Kerwin,
right, she's a former mayor, and so is Representative Cook. He's also a former mayor, so.
Right, and you'd think. I'm sure they did this when they were mayors, is they went down to Austin to make their case. Mm-hmm. And they probably had they were compensated not in a salary, but they probably had their expenses covered. A hotel room or a meal or whatever, as if that's going to bankrupt the city. I saw some of those comments about y'all's trip down there, like, oh, more waste of city money. I'm like, good grief. That's pennies compared to what the benefit is.
Yeah, if we could get one grant, it would pay for all of that
easily,
and it makes it. And we've got 2 hotel bills down there, one in the House, one in the Senate, companion bills, to try to get us some relief to be able to have a conference center.
Oh yeah, I've ranted with y'all before about trying to get a conference center here, and as I've gotten to know y'all's situation a little bit better, that seems further and further off than it's ever been because of these kind of bills and what's facing us right now. Mm-hmm. But I'd love to have a conference center here.
Yeah, if we can get these bills passed. Now, usually what happens is there's other cities that also have want to get a conference center, and they'll put it in a big omnibus bill, and then they'll all get passed.
Hey, I got an idea. Why don't you pass a bond? And no, that ain't going to happen. That would generate some commentary on Facebook,
absolutely.
I believe.
Absolutely.
Mr. Phillips says, we are grateful to have a city council that is so involved and committed to providing services that the city desires to have. And I am as well, because I don't want to live in a city where there's like a 25-minute response time.
Right.
Or my house is half burned before the fire department can get there. Or I'm, basically having to replace my chassis of my car every 3 months because the roads are like four-wheeling across town. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and that's part of the issue with this property tax elimination or this 3-year appraisal is we're growing out west towards the toll road, and we need a fire station out there. Mm-hmm. And we're budgeting over the next 4 years for a really nice fire station, enough FTE to stock the fire station and vehicles. And with the 3-year appraisal, that's probably going to be put on hold.
Yes, and, that growth is going to happen. I was talking to Mr. Hudgens, Charles Hudgens, on Monday. He's a candidate for Place 5 on Joshua ISD School Board. And the problem they have is all the growth in Joshua ISD is in Burleson.
Right.
And they have to account for that. And they have their own problems with that because not everybody's excited about having to fund more schools or whatever else. That I would direct people that's not there to Mr. Hudgens' show from Monday because it was pretty informative. And then I had Mr. Weathers on from Cleburne, and we talked about the Cleburne school bond that's up. And bonds are the original 4-letter word, aren't they? Mm-hmm. Well, plural would be 5, but whatever. But I'm just saying that, I was joking about the bond because I know what would happen if y'all even let it pass your, Travis, what is it? I forget what I was trying to say. cross your mind at all, the transom, that's the word I was looking for, the transom of your mind, you would, you'd have a hard time showing yourself in public, wouldn't you? But you're going to have these contingency plans in place, aren't you? Just in case.
And we're putting plans in place now, so for the citizens to be comfortable, understand that we're not just sitting around waiting to see what happens. We're working really hard in the background, putting, I know, 2 good plans together to help continue the growth of the city.
Well, and speaking of the city, I want to bring up something I saw today. This would be that Cinco de Mayo thing. That's a big deal coming up. And see, that what I bring that up, not just because it's real fun. I love Cinco de Mayo because for most people, Cinco de Mayo is an excuse to drink beer. We got it. It's same thing for St. Patrick's Day. Everybody's Irish. Everybody's Mexican on these days, right? But it's a real big deal. And it's going to have music, food, and drinks and all this other stuff. It's really going to be fun. And the thing is about it, when I'm bringing this, it's at the plaza. Right. That plaza was built with public money. How much is that returned to the city?
Oh, it's been great.
Yeah, I mean,
it was such a good idea to do that.
Yeah, and that's what I'm talking about. That's what cities do.
Right.
I mean, we wouldn't have the farmers market the size it is. We wouldn't have these events going on. We wouldn't have the hot sounds of summer and all this other stuff. I mean, we maybe have them, but would not have them in a venue like that. And the growth of those businesses around it, like Razoo's and that Twisted Sisters, I think is opening up pretty soon.
It's open.
It's open now?
Yes.
Okay, got to give it a shot. And things like that. So it's going to be on the Saturday evening on May 3rd. And also it provides a place for nonprofits to do things as well. The city facilities, for example, on April 26th, we have Next Step Walk for Life over at Bailey Park. And we have a nice park. We have a nice walking area to do it. And it's because the city provides that. And so on Saturday, starting at 9 o'clock, Saturday, April 26th, rain or shine. Well, if it rains, they probably have contingency plans. Last year it did rain, and the Church of Christ opened their doors, and they did their walk inside, which was very gracious of them, certainly. But if you want to participate, there's the QR code on their webpage. Also, if you want to sponsor somebody, if you want to be a walker, if you just want to donate, that's a big deal. They have 2 big fundraisers a year, and this is their first one. Also, the next day, we have Vineyards and Vibes over at Harvest House at the Lost Oak. I got some caught there at Lost Oak Winery, which is another great venue. And so, those are great events, both of them. We're very, very fortunate to have in this city these type of nonprofits. But they honestly, the reason, among other various reasons, besides just the generosity of the citizens, it also has the support of the city of Burleson, and that makes a big difference. To have that kind of provision of facilities and things like that. Same thing with coming on May 10th, we have City on the Hill. You may have heard of Lisa Schwartz. I don't know. Of course, you have Crazy Eights, and they're going to be at the BHS parking lot, and they're going to be probably using that portable stage like they've been using. And that portable stage has been very handy. So we got lots going on, okay, in terms of nonprofits and whatnot. A couple of just programming notes, if you will. This show will be put on the air around 6 o'clock on, well, I'll talk about The Journey. The Journey's promoting the show, okay, today. They're not going to play the show. They're going to direct people to listen to it if they're interested in this, because even Christians want to know what's going on with their property taxes, Yeah, and this is my wife's favorite radio station as well, so I hear it every time we're in the car together. But The Journey is going to promote this, and so hopefully people and the listening audience will be directed to this show if they have some questions. Also on community radio tonight on my radio station, this will be played at 6 tonight and at 1 o'clock on tomorrow. And so people, if you want to catch it there, it's on Live 365, TuneIn, and Odyssey. And we're working with Apple and Spotify. I don't know what's been going on with that, but Taylor is hard at work at that, and so this should be on that pretty well. I'm going to ask y'all a tough question now before we leave. Re-elections next year for both of y'all. What's y'all's thoughts on the matter for each one of you? You want to go first, Adam?
Sure. Plans to
you going to do it again?
Try it again? Yeah.
You didn't learn the first time. And Miss Martha's on board.
She would be on board. Yes,
she will be on board.
Yeah. No, just real quick. There's a bill to move the elections to November. Then, if it does go through, we all basically get an extra 6 months automatically, and then the elections would be in November. But as of right now, they're still in May.
What's your preference?
I like May, but again, it's the state, so they're going to make us go.
Well, personally, I think the reason they're doing that is because the turnout's so much different on May versus November that it sometimes helps certain people in power already, But that's just my opinion. But I'd prefer it in May as well because
you get on the back of a very large ballot in November, and by then everybody's
plus if you're on a big long ballot and they may just skip voting, but also the fact is what's on that ballot, national elections or whatever else, may affect the local elections more than it should. Because right now we're concerned about the city of Burleson, not Washington D.C. and all the hair pulling going on there. But anyway, so you're going to run again. How about you, Mr. Scott? I know you got some considerations besides, your health, certainly.
The health will control what I do, but if I'm in good shape and Sherry's on board.
That's the second one I was going to ask you.
Then I would love to run because I love giving back to the city. I love volunteering. If I'm not going to be running for council, I'll be volunteering somewhere else. As
far as the other two elections that will go on in the next election, whether they're in a year from now or 18 months from now, we have Phil Anderson. Well, I'll let him speak for himself. I won't speculate. And then the mayor's race. And
Correct.
I'll let Mr. Fletcher speak for himself. I won't speculate on that either. So there you go. Sherry says she is on board. All right. Yeah. So she said that publicly now.
Check that box.
Okay. You got Bill's vote. The city would be a loss without either of you two gentlemen, he's saying. So I believe that to be true. And that's really been, it's been great. This last few years, I don't know, the last 3 years maybe, have been so much better. And we're dealing with real problems, and I joked with Victoria, thank you for making government boring again. Because, governing is a grind and it's tedious. Politics is Hollywood show business crap, right? But governing a city is a grind, isn't it? Because you got to go through all these details and you got these procedures and you got to have all this data and you have to have, so many meetings and you have to Open Meetings Act and all this other stuff. A lot of people think it's a lot more glamorous than it really is.
Well, we do have great counsel. We've got, starting with place one, we got Victoria. And she's working with COG to help Burleson out, and she's volunteering a lot of her time with COG. And then you've got the coach. He's got his thumb on the heartbeat of the city. He knows what every citizen wants.
It's pretty true. Phil really is integrated into this community.
And Alexa, she knows the real estate and the growth in the city. And you've got the mayor who knows everyone and has the ability to talk to anybody at any time and help out. And then I kind of hang out, and
I think you do more than that.
You've got Dan, who's been around for a long time. He knows his city. He's very educated. And you've got Adam, who's unbelievable.
I understand you're the numbers guru, Mr. Russell. Is that right?
Larry's got the spreadsheet.
You got the spreadsheets, yeah. Well, you got your wife's endorsement, Larry. She says, Larry works very hard for our citizens. And Jackie Jones has given y'all her endorsement as well. So that's a good thing. Yeah. It wouldn't shock me 100% if y'all run unopposed, which is okay by me. I mean, we could go for a long period of stability and that kind of thing. It's like the school board. I mean, they were supposed to have 2 seats open, but people, I think, were pretty satisfied. So they didn't have any really big reason to try to oppose one of the candidates. So there you go.
We're going to do our best in the budget. So we've got a lot of tough decisions, but like I said, we're going to do our best.
Well, I appreciate that. Another programming note, on Monday, I will have Lisa Schwartz here, along with Liz Hargrove, and we're going to talk about the City on the Hill. And then on Tuesday, I'm going to be talking to Erica Vyers from Reach across Johnson County. They have a mental health seminar coming up in May, which has really grown. I mean, this is like their 3rd one, I believe, and it's really grown. And if I remember correctly, it's at Pathway. So there you go. Thank you, Josh, for all you do.
Anytime.
Y'all take care of yourselves. Thank you, gentlemen, for showing up. I appreciate y'all, particularly with your health. Good luck to you. I know you're going to have some checkups today, right?
Today. As soon as I leave here, I'm headed to Dallas.
I mean, good luck with the traffic. And I'm going to Dallas myself. Adam, thank you for everything y'all do. I mean, it's not everybody says that to you, I'm sure, but we appreciate what you do for us.
Thank you.
And y'all take care, guys.
All right.